Today we have the Moto Guzzi V100 Mandello in the shop. Arguably the prettiest bike we've had all year here, and a motorcycle that's been hyped extensively for 2023 and into 2024. But is all that hype really true? In today's video, your sweet Papa Yam is going to cover the ins and outs of this roadster touring machine designed to tackle twisty roads and long distance highways in equal measure. We're going to look at all the specs, dive deep into this motorcycle, take it out on the road, and render a final opinion. Big shout out to Eurocycle for sponsoring today's video. Hit them up in the link in the description below for all of your motorcycle needs and the European predilections. Now, let's take a closer look at the specifications of the Moto Guzzi V100 Mandello. The V100 Mandello we're featuring in today's video is a base model in this really cool red and gold colorway. It kind of reminds me of a 90s Ferrari. It does look pretty sweet, but the base model has a few critical features missing that you'd find on the S. Notably, it doesn't have electronically adjustable Öhlins suspension at the front. This one only has the base with the preload and rebound adjustability, and in the back you only have preload adjustability as well, and it's not electronically controlled. You're also missing the heated grips on this thing, the tire pressure monitoring system, and the quick shifter up and down. The base price is $15,490, but for an extra $2,000 you can get all the stuff I just mentioned, which I really think you should. If you're looking at this bike, definitely spec up to the S because you get a whole lot of bang for buck. Swing a leg over the V100, you'll notice that it is a very upright machine. The bars sweep back to you a little bit. You have a very nice, comfortable seating position on this motorcycle, meaning that you can crush big miles with it. It's not a sport bike where you're all leaned over, but it doesn't have foot forward controls and you're not hanging out like a big cruiser. Very neutral seating position. But I will say, at 514 pounds and a 32-inch seat height, this thing is a pretty substantial motorcycle. So if you're looking for something a little smaller, a little more svelte, a little more sporty, this might not be the right option. At the beating heart of the V100 Mandello is a 1042cc transverse mounted V-twin that makes 115 horsepower at 8,700 RPM and 78 foot-pounds of torque at 6,700 RPM, which are pretty good figures. I like to think that 100 to 120 horsepower range and the 60 to 80 foot-pounds of torque is really ideal for a street bike. It means that you can really use a lot of the motorcycle and it's going to be really fun to ride. The Moto Guzzi simps among you in the comment section right now will help me point out that this is a more compact engine block than Moto Guzzis of old. This is a thoroughly modern engine, dual overhead cam, liquid cooled, and you gotta say, it is a beautiful unit. They've tucked away all the wiring and everything, and my videographer actually told me that it looks very old school, and I have to agree. It's got a very cool vibe about it. It doesn't look like a super modern bike, even though it has modern amenities to back it up. Speaking of which, Brembo radial pole master cylinder has plenty of fuel at the lever up here. Brembo 4-piston calipers down below, pinching dual discs, got plenty of stopping power on this motorcycle, which again, you're gonna need it because it is pretty dang big. All that being said, there's a couple oddities that I want to point out on this motorcycle before we take it out on the road that makes this thing pretty darn unique. The big talking point for the V100 Mandello has to be the active aerodynamics. You see right here with this orange cutout, these are actually wings that pop out at a certain amount of speed. When you go up a certain amount of speed, it helps to deflect wind away from the rider. We're going to get it out on the road and see if that truly is the case and if it does help out, because I'm not really all that convinced, to be perfectly honest. You'll also notice that the Moto Guzzi is shaft drive. The shaft drive allows for a lot of ease of maintenance. You have to do nothing to this thing and it'll just run forever. However, it does increase drivetrain loss, and it also makes it so that when you first pick up the throttle on a shaft drive motorcycle, whole thing kind of picks up a little bit. It's a bit odd. I've never really loved shaft drive bikes. This engine block is more compact, as I mentioned, liquid cooled, dual overhead cam, fully modern motorcycle over here. But the coolest thing about it is it's got a new counter rotating crank to help reduce some of that Guzzi roll. Obviously, a motorcycle with the engine pointed this way instead of this way or this way means that it's going to have a little bit of oddities when you're at lean with it. This motorcycle also comes equipped, as you can see over here, with a dashboard and switch clusters over here that look suspiciously like Aprilia's, and that's because this motorcycle is owned by the Piaggio Group, which also owns Aprilia, Moto Guzzi, and all those other brands as well. So a lot of the stuff you'd see here, you'll find in an Aprilia RS660 or an RSV4 or a Tuono. These are all the same kind of clusters, and it's cool that the technology made its way onto the Moto Guzzi platform. So I have jibber jabbered quite enough. Let's swing a leg. Let's go take it for a spin. All right, enough discussions on the motorcycle. Let's swing a leg and let's ride it. So, as mentioned in the shop, this bike sits a little over 500 pounds. Swinging a leg over it, it doesn't seat that tall though. I'm about 5'11" with a 32-inch inseam, and I can very comfortably get both feet flat on the ground. I think if you were even 5'6" or 5'5", you could ride this motorcycle, depending on what your inseam is. You flick the key on, and you get to see the new Moto Guzzi TFT, which looks suspiciously like Aprilia's TFTs, because it's all owned by the Piaggio group, and yeah, it's all pretty much the same stuff. So actually, this whole switch cluster over here and over here is the same as what Aprilia is using. This throttle tube actually feels identical to the Tuono V4 throttle tube, probably the same one they use on the 660 as well. All this running gear is very similar. But obviously the coolest thing about this bike is this transverse V-twin. This is, I believe to my knowledge, the only new motorcycle you can buy that has this engine configuration, and it does give it quite a unique character. Let me go ahead and start it for you guys, and you'll see what I mean. You see that it kind of goes a little side to side. You get a lot of shake and shimmy from the bars here, because obviously those cylinders are working like this, so the forces are completely different than a traditional motorcycle where the forces are like this or like this. They're acting like this, so when I flick the throttle, I see the bike wants to shake a little bit. Shaft drive as well too, so that's going to give this thing a very unique character and flavor. But let's go ahead and take off on the road here, and let's go take it for a ride. I'm in sport road right now, and I've actually done a bit of mileage on this motorcycle. I find for my first ride and reviews, it's typically better for you guys if I've already done a little bit of miles on the bike rather than going in completely blind. So I've already got a few opinions formed on this thing. Taking off with the Guzzi here, the first thing you notice is what a delicious engine this is. Big 1000+ cc twin, nice modern feel to it, but still giving you a little bit of that Guzzi flavor and charm. I've ridden a couple Guzzis before, and they are pretty unique. There's no other motorcycle that feels quite like a Guzzi. And honestly, the thing I can compare Guzzis most to, especially this new one, this V100 Mandello that's like water cooled, and they've done a lot to it. You know, the BMW Boxer, the GS, is kind of like this too. It's very similar to a Porsche 911, and let me explain. So, a Porsche 911, the engine's in the rear, it's in the wrong spot, ostensibly. It's a flat 6, which is a pretty good engine configuration, but, you know, obviously a V10 or V12 always going to be better for racing applications, mid-mounts, and that sort of thing. This bike is very similar to that in that it's somebody continuing to develop something they know isn't really correct, but they do it based on just pure gumption and the fact that, you know, this is what they've always done. It's what they're known for. Again, it reminds me a lot of the BMW GS, where it's like, well, why would you use a Boxer twin? Why would you do it this way? And yet it's been refined and evolved over time in such a way that now it just simply works, and no one can deny that. And the Guzzi nowadays is the same thing. This bike just freaking works, man. They've done so much. They've combed over this engine, created this new compact block setup, totally new frame, liquid cooled. They threw Aprilia's understanding of TC and electronics at this thing, modernized the platform to what many people consider 2023's best bike of the year. Wow, best new bike of the year, huh? That's what a lot of people were saying. I don't know if I agree with that. I think this is a really charming, interesting little bike, but I think it falls short in a couple of different ways. So if you're just looking for that roadster touring blend of a bike, which is what this thing is supposed to be, then I guess it would work pretty well. You see here, I got ample passing power to get around this truck over here. I'm gonna slice into this other lane over here. It is a little chilly today, so I'm not punishing the front tire, so to speak. We're being very, very cautious and judicious about what we're doing here with this motorcycle. But yeah, I think
if you are the type of client that's looking for that sport touring, European touring thing, because I really think this motorcycle slots itself well for that Euro touring model. Guys over there will often jump on a bike like this and go crush 2,000 miles. This is the European version of a Harley-Davidson CVO. This is what these guys will take and go to Spain and Italy and France and, you know, back to the UK with it or something like that. 6th gear here. Let's pull on it a little bit. That's a nice amount of power. But in the US, this type of riding, although somewhat common, hasn't caught on quite as much like the, you know, like I said, Harley-Davidson CVO type of thing, the road glide. This sport touring kind of riding isn't as popular here. And I do feel that this Mandello base model in this beautiful red and gold configuration, which gives it kind of like a 90s Ferrari vibe. I actually really like the paint scheme on this thing. Being that this is the non-S, we're missing a couple critical features, in my opinion, to make this to touring model that it's supposed to be. If I were to get a V100 Mandello, which I'm going to be honest, this bike is not very high on my list of motorcycles I would buy, not because of the genre of the bike. I actually am interested in sport touring, and I might get a bike like that eventually, but this bike falls short for me in a couple ways. But yeah, I think the base model, no heated grips, no quick shifter, no adaptive suspension, which, look, it's not a huge deal. It doesn't have adaptive suspension, but if I'm paying north of $17,000, $18,000 for a motorcycle, I kind of want a full zoot. I find the ergonomics plenty comfortable for an all-day ride. You know, if you're going to go out and crush 300-400 miles on this thing, do a big large tour with it, yeah, I feel the seat would be very much up to the task. I've put a bit of an hour or two in this saddle, and I actually really like the way it feels. It feels really nice to just kind of put your butt in it and you know, be able to sustain long distances with it. I think the reach of the bars is a teensy bit long, but again, it's hard to make a motorcycle that's going to fit everybody perfectly, so if you need to adjust the bars a little bit on the Moto Guzzi, I don't think that would be too terrible. That'd probably be pretty simple to do. Alright, let's feel out the power of this 1042cc twin. Assuming I can get around this person. There we go, 3rd gear. Yeah, it really comes alive at the top end of the register. That's satisfying to use. It's got a really great honk of an induction sound. You can hear that when you crack it open. That's nice. Yeah, the thing about Guzzis is they have what's known as the Guzzi Roll. Because it's a transverse V-twin, it just, basically what it does is it acts on the chassis in a way that you wouldn't really expect. It causes the bike mid-lean to behave a bit strangely, and you can counteract that, and they've done that with, you know, adjusting the engine a little bit, making it a more compact V-shape rather than a totally oblong V-shape on it. But you still get a bit of a peculiar feeling from the seat of the pants for this thing when it comes to riding it in a more sport-oriented manner, but it splits the difference pretty damn well for kind of a sporty bike and a touring bike. Let's crack it open here, shall we? Yeah, it can definitely dance a little bit. Get a little bit of a boogie going. Front brake feels really nice master cylinder feel. Throttle is really linear and predictable in sport mode here. Really nice to use, honestly. This is a type of bike that you can have a lot of flow with, a lot of pace with it, you know? The type of bike that you're gonna always gotta watch people at that intersection. Type of bike that you want to really just kind of, yeah, flow through with it, just carve corners. I wouldn't say you want to like rail it and go 10-10, so it's not really what it's designed to do. You kind of want to park it in like dad mode and just kind of take the turns as they come. and just know that you've got a very competent motorcycle underneath you that you can kind of lug in lower gears, and higher gears, excuse me, and really enjoy it for what it is. Like, I kind of feel like this bike's sweet spot is third and fourth gear between this stuff, which is not normally what I would do in these corners. But this just feels nice. Yeah, it behaves very predictably, very nicely. And look, are there sport touring models with more power? Sure, there are. You know, you can get something like a BMW S1000 XR, or even the single R, that's a naked bike, not quite the same as this because this is a little more touring biased. I think the XR is kind of the biggest competitor. Yamaha Tracer 9 GT. You know, you can get these models that have a lot going for them in terms of the, you know, overall touring and sporty capabilities. But I think the Mandello sits kind of by itself in terms of, you know, a bike that has this much character and flavor, but still packaged in a modern way. Because it doesn't really feel like anything else, you know? You could sit there and say, oh, it kind of feels like a Ducati. Well, not really. It's the Transverse V-Twin is very different from something like a Ducati L-Twin, even though off throttle, the way it kind of goes like and kind of chugs along like a big muscle car is a little different than, you know, a Ducati L-Twin. But it's nice though. I bet with an exhaust this would sound so mean, but just off throttle between 5 to 4,000 RPM, just the way it purrs, it's so nice. I gotta say, this bike is such a slow burner for me. You know, the more time I spend with it, the more I'm kind of like, all right, like this is actually kind of a sweet little bike, man. I say little, but you know, you guys know what I mean. Come on, I'm not calling a 1,000cc motorcycle that weighs 500 pounds a little motorcycle, but you know, it's just a slow burn. Like, I'm slowly just riding it more and more, really appreciating it, and ultimately I find myself, I don't want to push the envelope so much with it, even though it can do that. What I want to do with it is just like, yeah, just kind of chill out a little bit, take it on a big long trip, just have it be a little friend of mine, you know? That could be so nice. All right, so I pulled over on the side of the road because I wanted to figure out how to raise the windshield, because it's a little chilly today, and couldn't figure out how to move it. Looked it up online. Turns out that it's like actuated by a motor, just like the active Aero. There's nothing in the TFT to tell me to activate it, so maybe it's me, it's user error, but I think that making a windshield so difficult to pull up that the user is kind of confused on how to even do it, it's pretty dumb. But that's just Aprilia and Piaggio Group electronics for you. I've always really disliked Aprilia's whole electronic interface. All the Tuonos that I've ridden, all the other bikes I've ridden from them, I just really don't prefer it. So I guess we're rolling with the windshield turned down, folks. To me, it feels like the Mandello deserves to be sold in the S trim only. This base trim is cool. It gives people an opportunity to buy in at a slightly reduced price point, but I do think that this bike would lend itself a little bit better if it had a little bit more features in the base model. The fact that it doesn't have heated grips on a touring bike, come on, what is that, you know? How are we gonna sell a touring bike without heated grips? Electronic suspension, nice to have, don't need to have. The active Aero, kind of gimmicky. Don't really feel a difference with it on or off, to be honest. But you're paying for that lovely, lovely engine, aren't you? And the thing about it, too, that the Italians just do really, really well, it's a beautiful motorcycle. You have to admit, the packaging of it, the look of it. You know, I've showed a couple people this bike, and they're also, oh man, that looks really nice. And the reason it looks so nice, and the reason they point to it looking so nice, is the fact that it's so clean looking. You know, it's got this really nice design language to it, and the motor just looks like this jewel that's hanging off of the frame. It doesn't look like, you know, a bunch of wires and cables and a bunch of BS all stuck together. Wouldn't be an Italian bike if you didn't miss a gear, would it? It's got a very clunky gearbox, I'll give it that. Not in a positive way. It's still fun to ride though. Yeah, I feel like the Guzzi way of riding this thing is just being a gear lower, excuse me, a gear higher than you want to be, low in the RPMs, and just chugging along. It feels like it really enjoys doing that. It's really satisfying to pick it up off an apex, kind of low in the RPM, and just crack it open and feel that engine just kind of honking alive a little bit. You know, like right here I'm at 3,500. I just really nice. Right, so we're seeing the Guzzi work pretty nicely in these twistier conditions, more back road riding. But really, I want to see this bike's touring capabilities. I'm going to get it out on the open road, check out the cruise control, see how it feels if you wanted to just kind of sit back, relax, maybe put it into touring mode. Let's go check it out. Alright folks, making our way to the highway here with the V100 Mandello. Let's get a quick pull in, shall we? Why don't we romp on this thing a little bit? Missed the gear again. That 1 to 2 shift. Really nice amount of performance, but that gearbox, man. I've missed that 1 to 2 shift 3 times now. Is it me? Let me know in the comments if you think I just suck at riding and can't shift a Moto Guzzi. You gotta be a real Guzzista to ride one of these things, huh? Is that what you Moto Guzzi people call yourselves? Guzzistas? Who the hell knows? You know what I think you are? I think you're pretentious. That's what. No, just kidding. Just kidding, Guzzi people. Don't be so mad. Just because I don't think the V100 Mandello is the second coming of Christ doesn't mean it's a bad motorcycle. Let's see its filtering prowess. Relatively wide motorcycle. I may hit my cylinder head on one of these cars, but we should be in good shape. Oh, this gentleman left me a ton of space up here at the front. We'll go ahead and filter. I want to try the cruise control because historically I despise Aprilia's cruise control capabilities. I've tried it on the Tuono and the RS660s and those bikes. I've always felt it doesn't work very well. We're on a highway that has stoplights, so not much of a highway, is it? But we'll do our best. We'll try our best. I will say I am impressed with the Mandello's behavior both on the twisties and its composure going in a nice straight line like this. This bike actually really loves to just kind of crush miles. I think that if we opened our eyes and hearts a little bit here in the US, we could have motorcycles that, you know, are a little bit more flexible rather than your road glides and your CVOs and those sort of things. Because this is a bike that happily carves up a twisty road, happily will trundle down a long highway for hundreds of miles at a time. I don't know if it would do that great on track, but I don't think anyone buying this is thinking about taking it on track. That's not really what it's for. But as a beautiful, everyday, competent motorcycle, hey, it's pretty good, you know? And it's got character and pizzazz, which a lot of people want out of their bikes, myself included. That's why, you know, if you were to give me the choice between a V100 Mandello or a Suzuki Gixxis 1000 GT, man, I'm gonna take the Mandello every day of the week. It's just a little more interesting, a little more cool, a little more Italian, but you do pay for that privilege, right? Like, this has quite the price premium over a lot of those other motorcycles. I think for me personally, if I was choosing a sport touring bike, it'd be really difficult to make the case for this over something like the Yamaha Tracer 9 GT. That's a bike that has all the technology, all the pizzazz, all the flavor of a triple cylinder, really nice motorcycle, and it's cheaper than this thing. So, kind of difficult to make the case. I also really enjoyed the BMW S1000 XR. I think that's a great motorcycle that has a ton of horsepower. It's much more in the sport touring rather than sport touring. You know what I'm saying? Like, the emphasis is on the sport. But again, the Mandello, it kind of does I hate to say it, but it is kind of the 911 of motorcycles, at least in my opinion, because it's something that is being done ass backwards. There is no reason why you should have a transverse V-twin on a motorcycle other than you're like, oh, it's cool and different and I'm a free thinker. But ultimately, it's a dumb way of building a motorcycle. But they've refined it in such a way that you say, you know what? It works. Sure, it works. It's cool. And we're just going to stick to our guns and stick with it. Let's go ahead and try that cruise control, shall we? We'll pile the speed back here a little bit. All right, looks like we are on now. Nope, I guess I gotta press it again. Ah, there we go, now we're set. Okay, they seem to have fixed the weirdness of cruise control. I remember on the RS660, it was so difficult to activate cruise control on that bike, but this makes a lot more sense. And now I can increase the speed if I need to, decrease the speed, working really nice for me. And then a tap of the brakes will simply disable the cruise control, because this is a fully ride-by-wire bike, so you get cruise control with it. Very, very nice. But yeah, this sort of thing, this like lazy couch riding that you can do with the V100, yeah, dude, this works. This is really nice. I like this. Seat's comfortable. But again, if I'm gonna crush huge miles, this should come with heated grip standard. It should come with heated seats standard. I think it should just have a little bit more amenities in the base model that you just don't see, that it really should come with, to be honest. I think it's kind of silly that it doesn't come with those things. But the S does come with them, and it is pretty sweet that it does, so I have to give it to them. Oh, check it out! My wings have deployed! I always forget that that's the thing on this bike. It truly doesn't make much of a difference at all. Although it does have it, I really cannot tell the difference of when they're activated and when they're not activated. It's a fun gimmick, and it's neat that this bike has it, but to me, I'm just like, that's just an extra failure point. You know, I really wouldn't care if it was open all the time or closed all the time, but it will fail eventually because it is an Italian motorcycle, and you just know an electrical component such as this, how many times can it really actuate in its useful life before it fails? Probably not many. And again, the windshield situation, again, maybe I just have a very low IQ and I cannot figure it out, but I don't think it should be that hard to pull up a windshield, right? I shouldn't need to pull up an owner's manual to figure out how to change the windshield on a bike. Let's see if the wings deactivate. Oh yeah, look at that. It's a fun party trick, but I don't know, it's kind of useless too. What I like about this bike is the passing power though. Big twin, torque on tap. I'm in 5th gear here, check this out. Oof. Anywhere I want to go. So nice. And again, I hate to say it, but I do want to spend more time with this bike. I didn't think I'd like it. I do think it's a little overrated, but the more time I ride it, the more I'm like, you know what? This thing is actually kind of freaking sweet. It's a slow burn, folks. A slow burn. And, you know, it's not perfect, and you have weird quibbles with it, but ultimately, what a nice thing. What a nice bike. It's a little too spicy of a price, in my opinion, but it's a Moto Guzzi. It's a, you know, it's a fine Italian stallion. All right, ladies and gents, let's get it back to the shop. Let's render a quick final opinion on this Moto Guzzi V100 Mandello, and thank you so much for coming along to ride. Let's do it. All righty, folks. Peeling into Yami Noob HQ here, rendering a final opinion on the Moto Guzzi V100 Mandello. I do think Mandello, the name, I don't know, kind of, doesn't it sound like a male Italian prostitute? I mean, if you made it this far in the video, you're okay, you're with me here, you're a hardcore Yami Noob fan. Alright, Moto Guzzi V100 Mandello, final thoughts and review here on this thing. Well, first of all, folks, I mean, it's a beautiful machine, right? Look how pretty this thing is. I think it's worth the price alone just if you really like the look of it. However, I say this with a big however, I think that it's not the world-changing, game-changing, incredible motorcycle that many reviewers have made it out to seem. It's a great bike, works really well. There are some weirdness with it. The gearbox is very clunky. The shaft drive causes that weird jump issue. The transverse V-twin causes that weird Guzzi Roll issue I was talking about. But the bones of it are very good. Nice feeling suspension. The brakes work great. The power is really nice. Very ample, usable power for on-road riding. But to say that this motorcycle has, oh, it has no parallel, no equal, it's a paradigm-shifting motorcycle, I really don't agree with that. Great bike, works really well in the sport touring category, but I really think that there's plenty of other options. I mean, personally, again, for me, Yamaha Tracer 9 GT, plenty of spice, plenty of pizzazz, all the tech and features you could want. Really nice motorcycle. BMW S1000 XR, beautiful bike, beautiful motor, works really well. It's not as characterful as this thing, but if you want just proper sport touring bike, I think that's the way to go too. So I'm going to give the Moto Guzzi V100 Mandello here a solid 8 out of 10. Very well executed, really nice to see Moto Guzzi doing some different things, but ultimately I do feel like it's, you know, got some shortcomings that prevent it from being a proper sport touring bike. However, I will say, maybe as I've spent more time with this bike, I've ridden it more and more, it does grow on me the more and more that I ride it. So maybe it's that slow burn kind of motorcycle. Maybe it doesn't pop and pizzazz with an amazing first impression, but ultimately it's a bike that you could really come to love and appreciate. Because, geez, if you buy motorcycles based on just emotional purchases, this is a beautiful bike. This is a really cool looking motorcycle. So big shout out again to Eurocycle for sending over the bike. We truly appreciate their support. Thanks so much for watching. I truly love you. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, God bless you. Really appreciate you doing the Lord's work. Leave me a comment down below if you did. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.
Keep watching Yami Noob.